Welcome back to Drunkview. The other night we saw The Little Things, starring Denzel Washington and Jared Leto, and some other guys. Connor, what was the plot of The Little Things?
The Little Things takes place in California, and there's a serial killer, seemingly a serial killer on the loose, that Denzel Washington tried to solve the case of 5 years earlier. And Denzel Washington is feeling guilty because he shot some girl, and they pretended that the mortician pretended that that girl was also killed by the serial killer, so Denzel Washington left. And then you got Rami Malek, who basically took Denzel Washington's place on the California police force, and he is on the serial killer case and wants it solved and gets help from Denzel Washington, and they try to solve the case and they think it's Jared Leto, and then I won't really spoil the rest, but our thoughts will be spoilers, so I guess if you don't want to be spoiled, there's the plot summary. So Aiden, what do you think of this movie?
Well, okay, I'll try to keep it spoiler-free for the most part. I'll give a little warning before I talk about the ending. For the most part, it's basically a knockoff David Fincher movie, like Seven, or Zodiac, mostly Seven. It's kind of just like Seven light. That kind of sums it up. I mean, really, the plot's really nothing special. It's kind of like generic cop thriller stuff where they know who probably did it, and he's creepy and weird. Jared Leto acts creepy and weird, and he gets horny for dead people and stalks them. And
Right. I
think for the most part, Jared Leto is cringe as always. He hams it up a little bit. I think everyone else is mostly good actors. Denzel and Rami Malek do good jobs. The shooting is competent enough. Story, fairly generic, I'd say. Yeah. Yep. So basically, on that end, I'd call the movie generally decent. It's nothing spectacular, it's nothing terrible, it's just kind of like a very middling David Fincher knockoff, and if you like David Fincher stuff, this will probably kind of be a nice thing for you, and if not, then it's a movie. To talk about the ending real brief, they try to have a David Fincher twist at the end. And I guess me and Connor kind of disagreed about the implications, but full spoilers. The movie implies either that Jared Leto wasn't the killer, or implies that he was, kind of. They kind of just slice it both ways, and just let the audience decide.
Yeah, they basically put it up for interpretation, where everything's could conveniently perfectly line up to be Jared Leto's the killer or not.
Yeah, and either way, their other suspect also killed himself off screen with very minimal mention, so.
Yeah, they basically never mentioned him again.
The main points of the movie, Rami Malek accidentally bonks Jared Leto on the head and he dies. And the whole thing is that Denzel doesn't want him to live with the guilt that he lived with for killing someone who might have been innocent, so he makes it seem like Jared Leto did it even though there's no real proof that he did. It's an okay twist. It's fine. I guess it's open for interpretation, so that's a little more clever than the average movie. I don't think it's a spectacular twist still, but...
My only problem with the twist is that the first 2/3 of this movie is basically a Law and Order episode with titties and a little more gore. Not necessarily fully in structure, but I mean in spirit, where it's like
Police procedural.
It's a police procedural, and the first 2/3 of this movie, because Jared Leto doesn't show up till probably at least the halfway point.
Yeah, about that.
And once Jared Leto shows up and becomes a major suspect, then you basically just focus on him, so the movie switches tones.
Yeah.
And then when his death happens, that's kind of when we also learn that Denzel was feeling guilty about killing that girl. So it kind of, to me, feels all like backloaded into the third act, like what the message was.
Yeah,
and it's like what you were watching the movie, what they built intrigue for, like who killed these women. That all of that was basically set up for the first 2 acts, and then once you get to Jared Leto, you're like, is he the suspect? Was there like a twist that it's someone else? And then they kind of just cock block you with that and say, yeah, Jared Leto's the only person we're going to follow now. And then he kills Jared Leto, and now it's up to interpretation whether he did it. Which I don't mind the twist about Jared Leto may or may not have done it. I think that's an interesting way to end your movie, but I don't know. It felt like it should have been more earned. Like maybe they were looking for Jared Leto from the start, or maybe Jared Leto became a prime suspect, but like the Denzel Washington case where they kind of closed the book on it too soon, and he felt guilty about killing that girl. Maybe that was more pronounced instead of just here's something that we're gonna throw in after Jared Leto's dead to kind of make the moral of the story something. Like they throw in a moral and a tone and an idea that's very important to the film at the end of the film, and it would have been relevant to know Denzel's relationship to this happening earlier in the film, in my opinion. But
yeah, it's not like something that adds hugely to the twist.
no, not in terms of like Jared Leto may or may not have done it, but I think the impact on Rami Malek is where it affects him character.
No, I know, but like the whole thing with him shooting the girl didn't have to be a twist to the audience.
Right.
It doesn't, like, outside of the fact that they both share guilt for killing someone innocent, but Jared Leto probably wasn't innocent. That you could have had like Denzel Washington's past come up earlier, because it's really not entirely relevant to the ending twists of him faking Jared Leto proof evidence.
Well, another thing they could have done is, if they wanted to further it, because Jared Leto, like out of all the leads, like Jared Leto seemed the closest, but obviously there's not like the 100% burden of proof or whatever. But it would have been nice if, and I know there was the other suspect that committed suicide, but we met that character and he didn't really seem like the most capable of doing a killing, where Jared Leto seemed just kind of psychopathic and cool-headed. But it seemed like they almost should have had like another suspect that, while less likely than Jared Leto, could have possibly done it, who was kind of in the peripheral throughout the movie, and then Rami Malek really gets on the idea of it being Jared Leto, but maybe there's evidence that points to it could be either, so there's more of like a blurred line. But as far as the movie presents, it pretty much couldn't have been anybody but Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Like there weren't any other suspects past when the guy killed himself, and that guy didn't seem like...
I think what they wanted to go for was like the audience and the characters are like 99% sure it's Jared Leto, but they don't have any evidence. And they just can't prove it and can't do anything about it.
Right.
But it still would have been better to have more concrete doubt, because Jared Leto spends the whole movie basically saying that he did it
Yeah.
over and over again, and they just can't prove it.
And he has like newspaper clippings and stuff.
The girl who got attacked by him identifies him, but because she saw him in the hall, they can't use her testimony.
He has 11 out of he has 11 out of 12 fingerprint recognizable bullshits that allow him to, so he's not quite there, and then he happens to work in a place convenient for the first victim to where he would have actually been in her home right before she died, and he admitted to crimes earlier on that he revoked testimony. Like, it's, I mean, there is that shadow of burden. It's like, either give us more circumstantial proof that Jared Leto isn't true to make the audience biased. But if you look at that evidence that we get, well, you're still not like legally withholding evidence, I suppose. It still like strongly implies, which it might be the point. I don't know, it's thought-provoking. But the point is, like, the movie, I don't hate the twist, I don't hate how it's set up. The acting from everyone's pretty good. Jared Leto's a little cringe, but
Jared Leto's not as cringe as he usually is.
No, Jared Leto's
He's a little more cringe than the rest of the cast.
If it wasn't Jared Leto, I would probably just think. The performance isn't excellent for what it is. People have done the same shtick a lot better, but I mean, for what it is, it's fine. But just knowing that it's Jared Leto adds automatic cringe points. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just because Jared Leto's cringe. And you know he probably did some shit where like Denzel Washington was trying to eat like a peanut butter sandwich and he got like a fucking dead rat in there or something. Or maybe that was just some bullshit they made up for Suicide Squad.
There's definitely some bullshit they made up for Suicide Squad.
But I feel like, you know, this is a
fucking twist.
Bro, this is a Warner Bros. Movie and one that they're actually pretty heavily advertising on HBO Max and shit, so it really wouldn't shock me if this was the backdoor bring Leto back as Joker pilot.
Maybe.
He was playing straight up the Joker baby in this whole movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or they were just like, that dude played the Joker. He could probably do it.
Anyway, do you have any final thoughts about The Little Things?
I mean, overall, it's good. I don't hate the movie. It honestly kind of dragged. I think more could have happened. I was interested throughout the movie, but it just seems like one of those movies I wouldn't really care to watch again. Like, the twist is somewhat satisfying, the acting's pretty good, it was shot pretty well, but it's just one of those movies you watch once and you just never have an interest in watching again, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, what did you... Oh, Aiden, would you recommend The Little Things?
Yeah, it's middling. It's coming to HBO Max, so for people who have that,
I'm pretty sure.
it's a little, just slightly above average. It's enjoyable enough, lazy movie. Everyone's all around decent in it, so yeah, I'd give it a fairly light recommend. Connor, would you recommend Little Things?
I think if you're trying to watch something in theaters, it's probably the best thing that's come out in quite a while, honestly, basically since Tenet.
Pretty
It's
much.
not that good. I mean, okay, it's not... I think it's a good movie. It's not a great movie, it's not a bad movie. It's a good enough movie. If you're trying to find a little something to watch at the movie theater this weekend, or if you have HBO Max, you got a couple hours to waste, I'd say give it a shot. I don't see why not. It's decent enough.
Bye.
So yeah. It's not cigar smoke, this fruity vape juice mango.